2022 was the year the world fought, painfully, loudly, and sometimes beautifully, over the most fundamental questions. Who owns a body? What actually lasts? And is joy something we earn or something we choose? Hey everybody, it's Mystic Brew, founder of Return to Self, where I help you remember who you were before the world taught you who to be. And this is another episode of Hot Girl Math, where we do fun, energetic equations to figure out the cosmic clues that have been unfolding over time. If you've been following along, then you know that we've been time traveling since 2016. And in this video, we are diving into 2022. So buckle up and let's get started. You know the drill. We're kicking it off with numerology, and 2022, as you may have guessed, was a 6-year. Now, this is coming after the chaos of the 5-year of 2021. If you watch that video, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This was very restless, freedom-hungry energy. It was the long hangover, as we called it. And now here we are in 2022, which is a 6-year. And 6 is a number that is the embodiment of the heart. It is a number that arrives as a call to come home, whether that's to responsibility, relationships, beauty, healing, or service. The 6 in numerology is a number of the nurturer, the caretaker, the one who holds the family or the community together. It governs love, justice, domestic life, the body, and the creative impulse to make things beautiful, even in the face of pain. But as you already know, everything has a shadow, and 6 has a shadow as well. The shadow of 6 can look like becoming the martyr, the one who overgives and burns out, the one who tries to fix and control others in the name of care. I'm sure none of us know anything about that. In a 6-year, the central question is, what do you owe to yourself and what do you owe to others? And are you currently confusing the two? The triple twos in the year 2022 also amplify that numerology of the number 2, which we touched on in the 2020 video. So this is amplified energy around duality, polarity, and the tension between opposing forces to an almost electric degree. When it comes to the Chinese zodiac, 2022 was the year of the tiger. Now, the tiger is a symbol of strength. It is also a symbol of exorcising evils and bravery. 2022 was specifically the year of the water tiger. Now, yes, the tiger is the king of beasts, not the emperor, but the one who hunts alone, the one who cannot be domesticated, and who moves by instinct and power rather than strategy or submission. The water element of the year adds a softening to this tiger's fire. It brings some fluidity and depth, as well as emotional intelligence, but also a little bit of some unpredictability. Water can be still or it can be torrential. It can be nurturing or devastating. Tiger energies in general are very focused, determined, and geared towards achievement. Now, when we get into astrological transits of 2022, one of the most historically significant astrological events occurred in 2022, and that was the United States' Pluto return. You may have heard some astrologers talking about this. Now, we've touched on what a return is in previous videos, but as a quick refresher, a return is simply when a planet returns to the place where it was when you were born. And maybe you didn't know this, but astrology and birth charts can be pulled up for places, for things, for events, significant events. So America has a birth chart, and the Pluto return of the US had dates of February 20th, July 10th, and December 28th, all in the range of 2021 and 2022, with 2022 being the peak year. Ooh, confirmation burp. Now, generally speaking, Pluto takes about 240 years for a return. That also means that this is the first time in history that we are experiencing a Pluto return in this country. Pluto in Capricorn returned to the exact degree it occupied when the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1776, demanding a national reckoning with everything that the Founding Fathers promised and everything that it failed to deliver. Power structures, democracy, racial justice, institutional corruption. Pluto returns, takes all of this, and puts it on the table at once. Isn't there a saying, too, that empires tend to experience their collapse at around 250 years? Coincidence? I don't believe in such things. That wasn't the only astrological transit worth noting in 2022. We also had Jupiter conjunct Neptune in Pisces, April 12th. This was the year's most spiritually significant transit and one of the rarest. On April 12th, Jupiter and Neptune met together in Pisces. Remember, a conjunction is when two planets come together, opening us up to experiencing a spiritual awakening through boundless compassion. This transit inspires hope and imagination, and you can see glimpses of possibilities on the horizon. Jupiter and Neptune are co-rulers of Pisces. When they come together, they embolden each other in their shared aim to expand consciousness. This time can be great for exploring a new spiritual practice, and perhaps that was something you noticed in your personal life. Maybe in April of 2022, something happened that allowed you to awaken to a new spiritual concept, hobbies, perception, perspective, a way of being. This can also invite you to work more with your dreams and to study the metaphysical. Again, everything has a shadow side, and with this, the shadow is escapism. Now, this is the first time that this happened since 1856, and the world delivered both its promise and its shadow. We saw a surge in the spiritual and creative yearning, while alongside witnessing equally historic levels of disinformation, delusion, and collective confusion about what's actually going on. In addition to Jupiter and Neptune meeting up in Pisces, Jupiter was also moving through Pisces and entering Aries. This created a feeling of racing ahead to the future because, again, as we've mentioned in other videos, Pisces is the last of the zodiac, and then it moves to Aries, which is the beginning of a new cycle. And that energy is very different. Aries energy is let's frickin' go right now. We'll think about it later. And so here we are with this energy that is asking us to move forward, but we're not really sure where to go. You want to catch the tide, but you also want to keep your eyes open and ask questions. So Jupiter's passage through Aries from May of 2022 onward amplified this individual courage and the impulse of me first, which is something that Aries teaches us. This is also the energy of war, of assertion, of those who act before thinking, like I said. And funny enough, Russia's invasion of the Ukraine was launched under this energy. Additionally, Saturn was in Aquarius all year, keeping its stern eye on collective systems, social contracts, and the rules governing how people live together. Saturn transits often infer a certain level of restriction, as you may know by now if you've been following along. You know Saturn is a little, you know. And so Saturn's transit through Aquarius all year inferred a certain level of that restriction that prompted us to question our boundaries. Do we even have any? And again, this goes back to what we were saying about the numerology, this embodiment of love, of caretaking, of nurturing, but knowing the fine line of when that starts to teeter into martyrdom, the savior complex, overgiving to the point of sacrifice. Saturn's the one who kind of pushes you into alignment to show you, hey, you're doing a little too much. You got to stand your ground a little bit. You got to have a little backbone. You got to make sure that you're not just out here doing everything for everyone else as a distraction for the work I'm asking you to do on yourself. The Roe v. Wade decision, NATO's cohesion in the face of Russia's invasion, the restructuring of Twitter, the UK's revolving door of prime ministers, all of this was happening while Saturn was in Aquarius. And all of that is aligned with this theme of the social contract being tested, rewritten, or outright broken. We also had an eclipse series in 2022 in Taurus and Scorpio, and this opened a new chapter that focused on resources, values, money, death, and transformation. These eclipses occurred April 30th with the solar eclipse in Taurus, October 25th with the partial solar eclipse in Scorpio, and November 8th with the total lunar eclipse in Taurus. Now, the Taurus and Scorpio axis, which again, I tell you that every sign has its sister sign and they represent a spectrum. This governs the material world with Taurus, what we own, what we share, what we fight over, and what we must release when we die. Scorpio, the unseen. The year's financial shocks, energy crises, and succession stories from Queen Elizabeth to crypto's collapse all ran along this axis perfectly. Taurus also rules finances, again, material, tangible resources, and the body. Keep that in mind. Lastly, when it came to astrology news in 2022, we had Mars retrograde in Gemini from late October until the year's end, creating a period of information overload. Mars is in a planet of ambition, drive, war, energy, vitality, the way you go after things. And Gemini is all about information. So yes, information overload, miscommunication, and reevaluated action. This energy showed us the world sort of like talking over itself over and over again to the point where it couldn't even land on the truth because it couldn't even find it. Now, 2022 was no different than every other year we've been time traveling to when it came to historical events. We had the U.S. Supreme Court causing global shockwaves in June when it overturned its landmark 1973 Roe v. Wade decision, enshrining access to abortions nationwide. Following the ruling, abortion bans were brought in by Republicans in 16 U.S. states. It was the first time in American history, here we go with all these records we break, that the court had revoked a previously established constitutional right, a seismic dismantling of precedent that sent millions of women into immediate legal jeopardy. And this is important to remember today when we are seeing our Constitution being treated like a piece of bubblegum wrapper. We saw in 2022 the ability to overturn something that was a constitutional right. If they can do that with this, what else can they do it with? On June 30th, retiring Justice Stephen Breyer administered the oath of office to Ketanji Brown Jackson, officially welcoming her to the Supreme Court, which also marked her being the first Black woman ever appointed to the nation's highest court. The same week, the court stripped a right from women. So again, we're seeing what we talked about in the beginning, this energy of opposing forces. The January 6th Select Committee held a series of riveting public hearings throughout the summer, presenting evidence of Trump's multi-part effort to overturn the 2020 election. In December, the committee voted to refer Trump to the Justice Department for possible criminal prosecution. Ooh. I don't know what exactly we're burping about here. Maybe it was the thought I had, which is we're about to see it again. On May 24th, a Texas school shooting occurred that killed 19 children and 2 teachers at Robb Elementary School, the deadliest school shooting since Sandy Hook a decade earlier, and reignited a gun control debate that once again produced minimal legislative action. It's not funny, obviously. I chuckle because it's like, if you've been watching since the beginning, every video I'm like, deadliest, historic, all these different things about what this country does, but it's always bad. Like, it's bad things. It's embarrassing. Anyway, consumer prices reached a 40-year high, with the year-over-year increase hitting 9.1% in June. Gas prices reached $5 a gallon. And I can tell you now, from the future of 2026, they will go up. Inflation dominated daily American life in a way it hadn't since the early 1980s. And as you know, we are still experiencing it. Lastly, in national news, Democrats defied historical expectations in the midterm elections, with Roe v. Wade's overturning, energizing voters, and preventing the anticipated Republican red wave. Now, internationally, we touched on some of these already. Russian President Vladimir Putin launched his biggest invasion in Europe since World War II when he sent troops into Ukraine on February 24th. Russian forces failed to capture the capital, Kiev, and toppled the government of President Zelensky. In April, Russian forces were accused of massacring scores of civilians in the Kiev suburb of Bucha. The invasion of Ukraine and resulting sanctions on Russia created an energy crisis of a magnitude unseen in half a century, with costs for gas and electricity soaring globally. Europe faced its worst energy crisis since the 1970s oil embargo, with some countries rationing power as winter approached. Again, we're time traveling, we're going back, but if you also know what's happening right now, talking about this is a little eerie. But we'll get there when we get there. Focus on 2022. Queen Elizabeth II died from natural causes at the age of 96 on September 8th. She served as Great Britain's monarch for 70 years, the longest reign of any British monarch. Her death closed an era that had spanned the entirety of the post-World War II world. The grief was genuinely global, and the pageantry of her funeral was watched by an estimated 4 billion people. In Iran, the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini in morality police custody in September, where she was arrested for allegedly wearing her hijab improperly, ignited the most significant protest movement Iran had seen in decades. Women cut their hair and burned their headscarves in the streets. The regime's violent crackdown killed hundreds. The movement's rallying cry, "Woman, Life, Freedom," became one of the year's most powerful phrases. So already, just with what we've shared, I think you're seeing a theme of what's been coming up, especially around women, women's rights, women feeling liberated to stand their ground, to speak up. And this feels tied to the fact that for so many and for so many years, the nurturers, the caretakers, that sixth energy was predominantly held by the women in this world. And now the women in this world were seeing their rights being taken away in front of their eyes and being shown, where do you draw the line? It's sad because you would hope that your country, that your fellow citizens, that the people around you would create a society and infrastructure that protects you, especially when you're the one who helps nourish and take care of the people around you, sometimes to your own detriment. And yet we were being shown collectively and perhaps individually, depending on your journey in 2022, that the takers will take for as long as you keep on giving. On November 15th, the world surpassed 8 billion people. Crypto also imploded in the year's final months, FTX, the cryptocurrency exchange run by Sam Bankman-Fried, collapsed in November in what prosecutors called one of the largest financial frauds in American history, wiping out billions in customer funds and sending shockwaves through the entire crypto ecosystem. Additionally, billionaire, although now might be trillionaire, Elon Musk bought Twitter. And lastly, from June to August, Europe was plagued by a series of record heat waves hitting 40 degrees Celsius or more. The lack of rain between heat waves led to some of the worst wildfires in history. In France alone, 62,000 hectares went up in flames. I don't know that word, but hopefully I used it correctly. Meanwhile, Pakistan experienced catastrophic flooding that submerged a third of the country, affecting 33 million people. It's like we knew that we've been experiencing some crazy shit the last 10 years, but when you hear it back to back, it's actually mind-boggling what we have adapted to, what we have experienced. And again, that's why I'm saying the processing of everything, which we have barely touched the surface of. Oh my gosh. Moving on to pop culture news, the slap heard around the world at the 94th Academy Awards. Will Smith walked on stage and slapped the host, Chris Rock, across the face following a joke that Rock made about Jada Pinkett Smith's alopecia. Viewership for the Oscars grew by 511,000 viewers during the 15-minute period during the slap. The event consumed the cultural conversation for weeks, simultaneously trivial and profound. This became a conversation starter around topics that had to do with dignity, disability, public performance of masculinity, and the consequences of unchecked impulse. Everything Everywhere All at Once, a chaotic multiverse film about a Chinese-American laundromat owner finding meaning in infinite realities, won Best Picture, marking the year's most joyful award story and an unlikely but perfect metaphor for 2022's fragmented reality. Again, we're seeing the dichotomy of these opposing energies. Beyoncé unleashed her long-awaited 7th studio album, Renaissance, on July 29th, and if you were like me, that became your summer anthem. Fans were treated to 62 minutes of Beyoncé singing over pristinely produced house music, paying homage to the queer Black pioneers of dance music. Released in the shadow of Roe being overturned, and against a backdrop of all of this war and grief, Renaissance became an act of deliberate joy, a refusal to let the devastation have the last word. Break My Soul became the anthem of the summer, a song literally about quitting your job and reclaiming your life. Taylor Swift also released her 10th studio album, Midnights, in October and became the first artist to ever claim the entire top 10 of the Billboard Hot 100 in a single week. She announced the Eras Tour to a level of fan demand that broke Ticketmaster and led to congressional hearings about monopoly power in the live entertainment industry. Swift's cultural footprint in 2022 was less that of a pop star and more of a force of nature. Again, the women in 2022, let me tell you. And then we had the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial. The defamation case between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard was live streamed to a global audience and became one of the most disturbing cultural spectacles in memory. Every day, videos of the trial would flood social media timelines, and the trial became a flashpoint for debates about the Me Too movement, evidence, credibility, and the mob dynamics of social media, with Heard's testimony being widely ridiculed online in ways that many legal scholars and advocates found deeply alarming for what it signaled about how society judges allegations of domestic violence. As I briefly mentioned, Elon Musk acquired Twitter for $44 billion in October, firing half the staff and reinstating banned accounts, including Trump's, and beginning the erosion of content moderation systems that would reshape the platform's culture entirely. The acquisition was part spectacle and part genuine power grab over one of the world's most influential information systems. Serena Williams announced her decision to end her historic 2-decade-long professional career. The 23-time Grand Slam champion said goodbye to professional tennis, and in her retirement essay for Vogue, titled The Hardest Thing, she shared that choosing motherhood and self-evolution over legacy was her focus, which again, not only reiterates the energy that we spoke about in the beginning with that 6 numerology, but also a question on what it means to step away from the identity that defined you. And again, as we're going through this and you're recalling your own 2022 experience, what transpired over that year, especially if you're a woman or identify as a woman, chances are you may have had moments during that year where you had to set boundaries for the fact that you were continuously feeding a narrative or an identity that other people were able to take advantage of, but that was not serving you. So what are the 3 themes that seem to be weaving their way through all of this stuff? Well, let's see. First and foremost, we saw the body as a battleground. And this again was exacerbated with these eclipses happening in Taurus. Taurus rules the body. Everything in 2022 converged around the body, specifically on who gets control over it and what happens when they lose that control. Roe versus Wade was a direct legal assault on bodily autonomy for half the population. Iranian women were arrested, beaten, and killed over fabric. Ukraine's civilian bodies were found in Bushehr. Mahsa Amini's body was the spark that ignited a revolution. The Depp Heard trial put women's bodily testimony on trial before a global audience who largely mocked it. And the massacre at Robb Elementary put children's bodies on the line of fire again and produced legislative silence again. Beyoncé's Renaissance was in many ways a celebration of queer Black bodies reclaiming joy. Serena Williams retired from a sport that had, for 2 decades, scrutinized, policed, and questioned her body more than her tennis. And even the Will Smith slap was at its core about the violation of a body and the transgression of crossing a physical line in a space governed by social construct. So again, we're seeing the 6 years domain is the body, the home. And for many of us, this is our first home. And the care of living things. And 2022 just put all of that under pressure. The second thing we saw was the collapse of established order. What happens when structures fall? The water tiger tears through with strength and unpredictability. And the Pluto return in Capricorn was digging up the roots of American institutional life. Roe, 49 years of precedent, gone in a morning. Queen Elizabeth, the one constant in 70 years of geopolitical turbulence, gone in an afternoon. FTX, a $32 billion empire, gone in a week. Twitter, a decade of community building, gone in an evening. And Ukraine, assumed to fall in days, still standing. The year relentlessly tested the difference between things that looked permanent because of power and things that were actually permanent because of substance. Some great structures fell. Some things everyone assumed would crumble. Zelensky's government, the Ukrainian resistance, the Democrat Senate majority, did not. And lastly, we saw joy being used as a form of resistance. We had this backdrop of war and bodily threat and grief and institutional collapse, and 2022 produced some of the most deliberately joyful cultural acts in years. Renaissance was Beyonce's refusal to let sorrow have the final word. Everything Everywhere All at Once was a film about the meaning of love in the face of infinite meaninglessness. Iranian women dancing in the street with their hair loose after decades of forced covering. Taylor Swift making people scream with happiness in arenas for a 3-hour celebration of her entire creative life. Woman, life, freedom as a rallying cry in the face of a regime that kills women for their hair. The year's most powerful moments were not only dark, they were also acts of people insisting loudly and defiantly on the right to be alive and joyful while being alive. Now, as always, you know that we have some shadow work reflection prompts for you. But before we do that, I pulled a card on the collective activation that we were experiencing in 2022. And I did that off camera. I don't know what the card is yet. So it's going to be revealed together. And that is remembrance, the number 38. The frequency of remembrance supports our memory of everything that we have gone through as a soul in body, providing us with valuable information and tools to flow gracefully with and in this life. Let's see what the guidebook has to say as well. It is becoming more common for us to have access to memories of lives lived, experiences gone through, roads traveled, and journeys taken. Our memories are rapidly expanding beyond our current lifetime alone. Now that we are vibrating at a higher frequency, we are able to access deeper the parts of the grid, referred to as the Akasha, that hold our collective and personal memories of all lifetimes lived. The Akasha of the human being holds everything that the human being has experienced on this earth plane. However, this remembrance is not a linear function of the brain. Instead, it is an elusive and multidimensional aspect of the new human being, a human being that harmonizes the synaptical brain with the wisdom and intuitive thought of the heart and soul. This is tying into everything so much. There is an unmistakable sense of ancient cultures and times in the remembrance image, perhaps Native American or Mayan, and we can see the reference to future civilizations and off-planet connections as well. There is an indication that time is no longer a linear absolute, but a vertical, moment-to-moment experience that includes input from many different times, layers, and dimensions. Okay, body, time, opposition, the number 6, the heart, love, joy, also Everything Everywhere All at Once. This movie that wins Best Picture, that is all about infinite realities and how you're experiencing all of these lives at the same time, happening during this year when this energy is being activated for all of us. And again, as you reflect on your personal journey, where was this coming up for you? How is this being illustrated for you? I know for me personally, and I'm going to sound a little cray-cray right now, but that's okay. I'd be surprised if I haven't already. I experienced what could only be described as a quantum leap in 2022. There was some very eerie and weird and supernatural and crazy things that happened at the top of 2022 that had me questioning if I was even on the same plane anymore. Was I in the same reality? Did I just timeline jump? Did I quantum leap into somewhere else? The symbolism, the imagery, the experiences, the visceral response that I had. I'd be really curious to know if something similar happened to you. I really wish I could get into it more, but this is a story we're just going to have to save for another time. For now, let's go into your shadow work reflective prompts. As always, if you're interested in diving deeper into the shadow work reflective questions for 2022, I offer more prompts for my paid subscribers on Substack, which is linked below. Let's begin. First of all, what is your relationship with your own body, and who taught you that relationship? Again, the 6th year and the water tiger both asked us to return to the physical, the felt, the inhabited. The year's events made us question something urgent, which was, whose rules are you living in your own body by? Number 2, what in your life have you been treating as permanent that is actually just powerful? The Pluto return and the water tiger ask the same question here. What survives when the scaffolding is removed? Power and substance are not the same thing. And lastly, where were you waiting for conditions to be better before allowing yourself joy? Again, the 6th year calls for beauty and nourishment, even in or especially in difficult times. Beyonce didn't wait for the world to be less terrible to release Renaissance. The Iranian women didn't wait for safety in order to dance. Where are you holding back your joy because you're waiting for everything around you to give you permission to actually live it? And this is a question even for today. We may feel a lot of guilt for still trying to enjoy our lives given what's going on in the world. I don't want you to forget that sometimes your joy is the greatest weapon. As always, thank you for sharing your time and trust with me. I hope you enjoyed this time travel excursion into 2022. As you know, in the next video, we'll jump into 2023 until we land back here in 2026, where we will get into what is happening now. And my goodness, do we have things to talk about. Please like, subscribe, and comment to show your support. Either way, I will see you next week for another episode of Hot Girl Math.